Most people believe that winning requires force. That to come out on top you must be louder, faster, more aggressive than everyone around you. They exhaust themselves fighting visible battles, defending their reputation, explaining their decisions, reacting to every provocation. And they lose. Not because they weren't strong enough, but because they were playing the wrong game entirely. Sun Tzu understood something most people never realize. The greatest victories are won before the battle even begins, and the most powerful moves are the ones no one ever sees coming. Over 2,000 years ago, a general from ancient China wrote a document so dangerous, so precise in its understanding of human psychology and conflict, that emperors kept it secret from their enemies. That document was The Art of War, and hidden inside its pages are not just military strategies. There are 9 mental tricks so deeply aligned with human nature that they work just as powerfully today. In your workplace, your relationships, your personal conflicts, as they did on the bloodiest battlefields of ancient China. These are not tricks for the weak. They are the mental operating system of every truly untouchable person who has ever walked this earth. Before we go deeper, drop one word in the comments right now. Write the word strategy. Because what you're about to learn isn't just information. It's a shift in how you see every interaction, every conflict, every opportunity around you. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Sun Tzu once wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Read that again. To subdue without fighting. Not by being louder, not by being more aggressive, not by brute force, but by being so strategically positioned, so psychologically invisible, that your opponent defeats himself while you simply observe. This was not poetic language. This was a precise description of the most dangerous mental posture a human being can occupy. And it begins with the very first trick, one that almost no one practices, because almost no one understands how much power they give away every single day just by being predictable. The first mental trick Sun Tzu mastered was the art of formlessness. Most people walk through life as open books. Their moods are visible on their faces. Their plans are announced before they are executed. Their weaknesses are broadcast in every conversation. Sun Tzu taught something radically different. He believed that the strategist must become like water, shapeless, impossible to grip, impossible to predict. When you have no fixed form, your opponent has nothing to attack. Think about the most powerful people you know. They are never fully readable. They speak with calm precision. They don't reveal their next move. They don't explain their decisions unprompted. They create a kind of gravitational mystery around themselves that pulls others in. That mystery is not accidental. It is a discipline. It is the deliberate practice of showing only what you choose to show and nothing more. Here is where most people make their first fatal mistake. They believe that transparency builds trust, and that trust builds influence. And they are partially correct. But Sun Tzu understood something more nuanced. There is a difference between honesty and overexposure. Honesty is a virtue. Overexposure is a vulnerability. When you reveal everything, your plans, your fears, your next steps, your emotional state, you are not building trust. You are building a map. And anyone who wants to use that map against you now has everything they need. The strategist shares what is useful and keeps silent about everything else. The second mental trick is what Sun Tzu called knowing the terrain before stepping onto it. In ancient warfare, generals who marched blind into unknown territory were already defeated. The terrain determined everything, where ambushes were set, where retreats were possible, where momentum could be built. In modern life, the terrain is human psychology. Before you speak, Sun Tzu would ask, what does this person want? What are they afraid of? What do they need to feel in order to cooperate? What pressure are they under that I cannot see? Most people enter conversations thinking only about what they want to say. The strategist enters a conversation already knowing what the other person needs to hear. This is not manipulation, this is intelligence. And intelligence, in any field, belongs to whoever gathers it most patiently. Watch how people behave when they are under pressure, not what they say, so what they do. A person under stress reveals their true priorities in seconds. They rush, they deflect, They go quiet when a certain topic is introduced. They over-explain things that don't require explanation. These are not random behaviors, they are signals. And Sun Tzu was obsessed with signals. He understood that human beings constantly communicate more than they intend to. The strategist listens not just to words, but to patterns. Patterns in timing, patterns in topic avoidance, patterns in the gap between what someone claims and how they actually behave. That gap, that invisible space between words and actions, is where all real information lives. But here is where it gets even more interesting, and this is where most people make a second critical error. They assume that collecting information is passive, that observation is just watching. Sun Tzu would disagree completely. He understood that the most powerful form of intelligence gathering is creating conditions that cause others to reveal themselves. Ask a vague question and watch how someone fills the silence. Propose a plan with a deliberate gap and observe who tries to exploit it. Stay quiet in a meeting and notice who rushes to fill the void with information they didn't need to share. These are not tricks of deception. They are tests of human nature. And human nature almost always passes the test by revealing exactly what Sun Tzu expected. The third mental trick is patience weaponized. This is perhaps the most misunderstood principle in all of Sun Tzu's philosophy. In a world that rewards speed, decisiveness, and constant visible action, patience looks like weakness. It looks like hesitation, it looks like fear. Sun Tzu knew this, and he used it deliberately. He wrote that the skillful fighter does not rely on the enemy not coming, but on his own readiness to receive him. Patience, in the mind of Sun Tzu, was not waiting passively for something to happen. It was active, disciplined preparation. It was the composure of a general who has already studied the field and knows exactly where the enemy's weakness will appear, and is simply waiting for the right moment to apply pressure. Think about what happens in a conflict when one person remains completely calm and the other person is visibly emotional. The emotional person is spending energy. The calm person is conserving it. The emotional person is revealing information. The calm person is collecting it. The emotional person is reacting to the moment. The calm person is shaping the outcome. Without saying a single word, without making a single aggressive move, the calm person has already gained the upper hand. This is patience weaponized. It is not the absence of power. It is power in reserve, accumulating interest, waiting for the moment when its use will be decisive. And Sun Tzu warned about something even more dangerous lurking beneath the surface of every conflict. He understood that the most costly mistakes in war, and in life, are never made by people who are calm. They are always made by people who are impatient, by people who react before they observe, by people who speak before they listen, by people who move before the terrain is understood. Impatience is not a character flaw, it is a strategic weakness, and it is one that every opponent, every competitor, every person who wants to use you against yourself will instinctively probe for. The moment you react too quickly, you have confirmed their hypothesis, you have shown them the door, and some of them will walk right through it. The fourth mental trick concerns what Sun Tzu called the illusion of advantage. He observed something brilliant about human psychology, that people rarely attack what appears strong. They attack what appears unguarded. They probe for soft spots. They look for gaps. And so the master, strategist, does something counterintuitive. He lets certain gaps appear visible. He creates the impression that he has not considered a particular angle, not prepared for a specific scenario, not defended a particular position. And then he waits. Because when an opponent believes they have found an opening, they become reckless. They commit to a direction. They reveal their intentions. They move. And in that movement, they expose everything. This is the psychology of the decoy. It is not deception for its own sake. It is strategic theater designed to produce information. You have seen this principle at work in everyday life, even if you never had language for it. The colleague who pretends to be unaware of office politics and watches quietly as others reveal their alliances. The negotiator who appears underprepared and listens as the other side overplays their hand. The person who seems unbothered by criticism and observes who doubles down when there is no reaction. In every Case, the appearance of vulnerability is a trap, and the trap works precisely because most people cannot resist an unguarded target. Sun Tzu knew this about human nature 25 centuries ago. Not much has changed. The fifth mental trick is the deliberate conservation of energy. Most people burn their energy on the wrong things. They argue with people who will never change. They defend themselves to people who have already decided what to think. They explain their motives to people who aren't interested in understanding them. They react to provocations that were designed specifically to cost them time, focus, and emotional equilibrium. Sun Tzu had a phrase for this kind of wasteful engagement. He called it fighting on unfavorable terrain. And he had one absolute rule about it. You never fight on terrain chosen by your enemy. If you find yourself in a battle where every move drains you and nothing moves in your favor, that terrain was not chosen by accident. Someone placed you there, and your first move is not to fight harder. Your first move is to leave. This is one of the most practically powerful insights in all of Sun Tzu's philosophy, because most people, when they find themselves losing, intensify their effort on the same terrain. They argue more forcefully, they defend more elaborately, they explain more thoroughly, and they sink deeper. The strategist recognizes unfavorable terrain immediately because it is characterized by one inescapable feature. Every action you take makes things worse. Every word you speak gives your opponent more ammunition. Every defense you offer confirms the accusation. That is manufactured terrain, and the only winning move is to disengage, reposition, and choose your own ground. But Sun Tzu warned about something even harder to navigate, and this is where the sixth mental trick enters, one that strikes at the deepest layer of human psychology. He understood that the most effective form of psychological control is never exercised through direct pressure. It is exercised through framing. Whoever controls the frame of an interaction controls the outcome without ever needing to raise their voice. Framing is the invisible architecture of every conversation. It determines what questions seem relevant, what answers seem reasonable, and what options seem available. And the person who builds the frame before the conversation begins has already won half the battle before a single word is spoken. Think about how this plays out in a workplace meeting. Someone arrives early and establishes the context before others enter the room. By the time the discussion begins, the frame is already set. The criteria for what counts as a good solution have already been shaped. The vocabulary of the conversation has been preloaded. Anyone who tries to suggest something outside that frame now appears to be derailing rather than contributing. They have been placed inside a structure they didn't design, arguing under rules they didn't choose. This is not dramatic manipulation. It is quiet, ordinary, and devastatingly effective. Sun Tzu would have recognized it instantly. He would have called it choosing the terrain before the enemy arrives. The seventh mental trick is the strategic use of absence. Sun Tzu understood that presence can become a liability. When you are always available, always responsive, always present, your availability loses all perceived value. People begin to take your attention for granted. They stop calculating the cost of your disengagement because they cannot imagine it as a real possibility. But when you withdraw deliberately, something powerful shifts in the psychology of those around you. Absence creates scarcity. Scarcity creates value. And value creates the kind of influence that no amount of effort or visibility can manufacture. This is not about playing games. It is about understanding a fundamental law of human psychology. People want most what they cannot easily have. Consider how this applies in your daily life. The person who is always the first to respond, always available for every conversation, always eager to engage, is slowly training others to treat their attention as an inexhaustible resource, and inexhaustible resources are never truly valued. But the person who is present with full intensity when they choose to be and completely absent when they choose not to be creates a completely different psychological experience in others. Their presence feels like an event. Their attention feels like a gift. Their engagement carries weight because it is not guaranteed. Sun Tzu would have recognized this as one of the most powerful forms of leverage available to any strategist, the leverage of controlled presence. The eighth mental trick is what Sun Tzu described as winning without engagement. He believed that the supreme victory is achieved not through conquest, but through positioning so superior that conflict becomes unnecessary. The enemy surrenders not because they were defeated in battle, but because they can see that battle would be pointless. In modern terms, this translates into something deeply practical. It means building such a clear, undeniable reputation for competence, composure, and strategic depth that others choose not to challenge you, not out of fear, but out of rational calculation. You become, in the most literal sense, not worth fighting. The cost of opposing you always exceeds the potential reward. This principle operates quietly across every domain of human achievement. The professional who consistently delivers results without drama becomes the one everyone fights to have on their team, not the one anyone wants to compete against. The leader who remains calm in every crisis, who never makes decisions based on emotion, who treats every setback as information rather than tragedy, builds an invisible wall around themselves that pressure simply cannot penetrate. People stop testing them. They stop provoking them. They stop trying to locate their breaking point, because over time, observation has confirmed that no such point exists. That is not dominance through force. That is Sun Tzu's supreme art, achieved in modern clothes. And now we arrive at the ninth mental trick, the final one. The one Sun Tzu considered the foundation of all others, the one without which all the previous 8 collapse. It is total mastery of the self, not mastery over others, not mastery over circumstances, mastery over the internal landscape, the impulses, the fears, the ego, the desperate human hunger for validation and approval. Sun Tzu wrote that he who knows his enemy and knows himself need not fear the result of 100 battles. Most people focus only on the first half. They study their opponents. They analyze the competition. They map out the terrain. But they never turn the same ruthless, honest gaze on themselves. And that omission is fatal. Because every time you react emotionally, you are handing your opponent a weapon forged from your own psychology. Every time you need approval, you create a lever that anyone who withholds it can use against you. Every time you over-explain, you reveal the exact points where you feel insecure. Every time you escalate, you confirm that pressure reaches you. Self-mastery, in the philosophy of Sun Tzu, is not a spiritual luxury. It is a tactical necessity. It is the armor that no weapon can penetrate, because it is built from the inside out, in the private, undramatic daily discipline of choosing observation over reaction, composure over performance, and position over noise. The person who has mastered these 9 mental tricks does not look powerful in the conventional sense. They do not command rooms with volume. They do not fight every battle. They do not defend themselves at every provocation. They do not announce their next move. They do not require validation to maintain their direction. They move through the world with a stillness that makes others uncomfortable. Not because they are cold, but because they are complete. Because they are operating from a place so internally grounded that external chaos simply cannot find a grip. Sun Tzu spent his entire life studying the nature of conflict, and his most profound conclusion was not about tactics or weapons or terrain. It was about the human mind. Here is what Sun Tzu understood that most people never will. The real battlefield is never outside. It is always inside. Every war that has ever been lost was lost first in the mind of the general who was about to lose it, before a single arrow was fired, before a single soldier moved. And every war that was ever won without bloodshed was won by a strategist who had already won the internal battle, who had already defeated impatience, defeated ego, defeated the desperate need to be seen as powerful, and in doing so, had become the most dangerous kind of person alive. The kind of person you never see coming. The kind of person who wins before they arrive. These 9 mental tricks are not shortcuts. They are a complete philosophy of how to move through a world full of conflict without being consumed by it. They require practice. They require discomfort. They require the willingness to sit in silence when every instinct is screaming to speak. They require watching when every impulse is urging action. They require trusting the long game in a world obsessed with immediate results. Most people will read this and agree with it intellectually. They will nod. They will feel the truth of it in their chest, and then, the next time someone provokes them, they will react. They will explain. They will engage on terrain they didn't choose, and they will lose the way they always have. But a very few, will do something different. They will pause. They will observe. They will remember the words of a general who died 25 centuries ago and who somehow understood exactly what was happening inside them in that very moment. Sun Tzu never promised an easy path. He promised a superior one. Not a path free of conflict, but a path through conflict that preserves your energy, your clarity, and your position. A path that turns every challenge into information, every provocation into intelligence, every apparent defeat into preparation for the next move. The strategist does not avoid difficulty. The strategist transforms it. And that transformation begins in the same place it always has. Not on the battlefield, not in the boardroom, not in the argument, not in the negotiation. It begins in the silence before you respond, in the breath before you react, in that fraction of a second where most people surrender everything and where the strategist claims everything. That is the battlefield Sun Tzu cared about most. And now, you know exactly where it is. If these 9 principles change the way you see the game, hit that like button right now. If you want to go deeper into strategy, psychology, and the philosophy of power, subscribe and ring the notification bell. The next video will take everything you just learned to the next level. Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 9 mental tricks are you going to start practicing first? And which one do you see in the most powerful people around you? Stay strategic, stay composed, stay untouchable.